paint trans people as threats. Trans people are just trying to live their lives. Though also very notably on the other side, people didn't see Newsom's comments as so black and white and thought that he was more riding the fence. Though also very notably on the other side of this, you had people saying, what he's trying to do here is not have a black and white conversation. He's saying that he supports trans people, defends trans people, even in the conversation that he's trying to have, saying, I do not like how you're talking about this vulnerable group of people. But at the same time, offering an olive branch of, in this particular setting of trans people in sports, there is a potential issue. And notably there, according to polling, this is actually a majority opinion even among Democrats. With a recent New York Times Ipsos survey finding that among Democrats or people leaning Democrats, 67% said that transgender athletes should not be allowed to compete with women. But there's also seeing folks pointing to moments where Newsom defended his stances on other aspects of LGBTQ rights, including a California law that prevents schools from forcing teachers to tell parents if their students identify as LGBTQ in the classroom, meaning that teachers can choose to tell parents if they want, but they cannot be fired if they chose not to. On the podcast, even though Kirk pressed him on it, Newsom defended it.
The law was explicit, said you can't be fired for not snitching on a kid, not just for being trans, for being gay.
But again, the reactions were big and varied, especially depending on where you went online. Though among those criticizing Newsom, they felt that overall he spent a lot of time caving, writing things like the way Charlie Kirk has Gavin Newsom sprinting to the right in this interview is something to behold, and saying Charlie didn't move an inch. And actually because Newsom struck such a chord with his comments on trans athletes, even Kirk himself wrote, looks like the Democrat civil war is brewing. And so with all this, I'd really love to know your thoughts, whether it be you sounding off more on just the prospect of Gavin Newsom having this podcast and what he's saying his goals from it are, and or your thoughts on the split of opinion or opinions in general regarding trans athletes in sports. But then next up from that, we need to talk about President Trump preparing to now sign an executive order that will dismantle the education department, according to a draft of the order that was reportedly obtained by numerous media outlets. And the fact that we're here, it's not really a surprise. It is something that Trump has been vowing to do for a while now. His pick to run the department, Linda McMahon, also publicly committed to unwinding the agency. And so on Monday, McMahon was officially confirmed by the Senate with all Democrats voting against her nomination. And just a few days later, Trump is now moving full speed ahead. And with that, as far as the specifics here, according to the reports, the draft order directs McMahon to, quote, take all necessary steps to facilitate the closure of the education department based on the maximum extent appropriate and permitted by law. And that last part is a super key thing to keep in mind because it really doesn't seem like the law will actually permit the Trump administration or any other administration for that matter to unilaterally dismantle the education department. Because the agency was created by Congress and many of its responsibilities as well as the major programs it administers, including student loans and programs for students with disabilities, those are all written into federal law. And so as a result, legal experts widely agree that it would require an act of Congress to fully dismantle the agency or even remove key responsibilities outlined under statute. And that would almost certainly require 60 votes in the Senate to break the filibuster, which of course Democrats would never go for. Hell, even McMahon herself acknowledged during her confirmation hearing truly eliminating the department would require congressional approval, with her also notably conceding that several programs are codified in law and can't be slashed without Congress, including several that impact students with disabilities and other vulnerable groups. And so as far as what McMahon can actually legally do, that remains unclear. Because again, the education department oversees a ton of important initiatives, many of which are either delegated to the agency under law or would be difficult for another department to manage, especially at a time when Musk and Trump are dramatically cutting the federal workforce, leaving many agencies understaffed to handle the duties they're already being given. And so that's why we've seen many experts agree that the most likely scenario is that the Trump administration is going to make a wide range of questionably legal plays here that will inevitably be challenged in lawsuits. Where the Team Trump game plan has been see what sticks, see what doesn't, and let's take what we can all the way up to the Supreme Court and see what happens. This seems like the going strategy for basically everything they've done. But with all that said, as far as what actually is going to happen next, a big thing to remember is that the draft version of this order circulating right now is still that, right? Reportedly a draft version. So, if everything that we've learned so far is true, it still could be subject to change, though it's also unclear if the core substance would really be altered at all. Also, as for when we'll actually see Trump signing a final version, sources initially told multiple outlets that it will come soon, potentially even as soon as today. But there, I'll note that this morning we saw Trump's press secretary responding to circulating reports in a post on X, writing, more fake news. President Trump is not signing an executive order on the Department of Education today. Which begs the question, what part is she saying is fake news, right? Is he signing it tomorrow or a different day, or is there no executive order? But then, next up, let's talk about it. Trump is already walking back his massive tariffs on Mexico and Canada, sort of. Because after previously issuing a 1-month delay, Trump on Tuesday officially imposed 25% tariffs on almost all products from two of our biggest trading partners. But then, just this morning, Trump announced that he has granted another 1-month delay for the tariffs on most goods from Mexico, with him writing on Truth Social that after speaking to Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, he has agreed to temporarily exempt Mexico from paying tariffs on goods that trade under the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, or USMCA, which notably is a free trade agreement that Trump himself signed during his first term term in office, right? And notably, that move coming one day after Trump announced that he would be giving U.S. automakers who operate under the USMCA a 1-month exemption from complying with the tariffs on Mexico and Canada following a meeting with major companies. With then, after that, the Trump administration giving the public some very mixed signals about whether other industries would be exempt. Right, on one hand, you had Vice President J.D. Vance suggesting that other sectors would not get carve-outs, saying, a number of industries have reached out to us to ask for exceptions to the tariffs. Trump wants tariffs to apply broadly. He doesn't want to have 500 different industries getting 500 different carve-outs. But then, when the press secretary was asked about other carve-outs, she said that Trump is, quote, open to hearing about additional exemptions. And then, this morning, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick told CNBC that tariffs on both Canada and Mexico would likely be delayed, with him arguing that both countries, quote, have done a good job offering us ever more work on stopping fentanyl at the border. But this is the Truth Social post announcing the exemptions for Mexico mentioned nothing about Canada, with him writing that the delay will be in place for Mexico alone until April 2nd, and adding, I did this as an accommodation and out of respect for President Sheinbaum. Our relationship has been a very good one, and we are working hard together on the border, both in terms of stopping illegal aliens from entering the United States and likewise stopping fentanyl. Thank you to President Sheinbaum for your hard work and cooperation. Now, also with this, something that potentially plays into it is that this announcement comes just days before the Sunday deadline that Sheinbaum set to announce retaliatory tariffs against the U.S. Because unlike Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, she held off on any immediate action until she could speak with Trump and emphasize her desire for some kind of agreement. They're also thanking Trump in a post on X today, writing, we had an excellent and respectful call in which we agreed that our work and collaboration have yielded unprecedented results within the framework of respect for our sovereignties, and adding, we will continue to work together, particularly on migration and security issues, which include reducing the illegal crossing of fentanyl into the United States as well as weapons into Mexico. Right now, as the recording, as far as what's going to happen with Canada, there's been no additional news about whether they'll also be granted a similar delay for tariffs on goods under the USMCA. Because on one hand, you have Lutnick's comments from this morning about Canada being likely included, and we've also seen Canadian government sources telling the BBC that the country is expecting an exemption of the same nature. But at the same time, you also have Trump repeatedly attacking Trudeau on Truth Social and claiming that he is trying to use the tariffs for political gain. With him, for example, in one post today saying that Trudeau is using the tariff problem, which he has largely caused, in order to run again for prime minister. Which, one, that's not how it works. People don't run for prime minister the same way that you run for president in the US. Right? It's a parliamentary system, and usually the leader of whichever party has the most seats in the House of Commons after a general election becomes the prime minister. And two, Trudeau has said that he'll step down as prime minister after his party selects a new leader this weekend. And notably, when asked during a news conference just today if he would consider staying on as prime minister in a caretaker role amid all the uncertainty with the US tariffs, Trudeau literally said, no, I will not be. Also with this, while Trudeau said that Lutnick's comments about the likely delay for Canada was a promising sign, he added, I can confirm that we will continue to be in a trade war that was launched by the United States for the foreseeable future. For now, we'll have to wait to see what happens with Canada and if they're given the same delay as Mexico, as well as if there are any additional exemptions that are made either in the near future or once we reach the April deadline. And thus continues the will they, won't they roller coaster that is Trump tariffs, which if you put it that way, it kind of sounds like a rom-com. Except instead of wondering if the rabbi and the podcaster can get together and that relationship can work, we're left wondering if cars, aluminum, steel, a bunch of stuff Americans buy is going to be 25% more, and or if we're flirting with a global recession. And apparently, at least for this chapter, we didn't have to wait that long. Because literally, as I was uploading today's show, we got the news that Trump signed an executive order formalizing the 1-month delay, and plot twist, the order does in fact include Canada. Though still, according to The Guardian, Trump did say he was still ready to impose reciprocal tariffs on both Canada and Mexico next month, and adding, during this interim period between now and April 2nd, this makes it much more favorable for our American car manufacturers. And then we'll get to more news in just a moment, but first, let this be the year that you take that side hustle or passion project to the next level. And I know how that procrastination life goes. I've been sitting on a book club idea for ages, but thanks to our friends and sponsor at Squarespace, DeFranco's book club went from a dream to done in under an hour. And seriously, if I can do it, you can do it. Squarespace has the templates and tools that you need to create and sell content, courses, physical products, physical and digital online, or just to have a portfolio. How much you put out there, how much you utilize, it's up to you. You just simply upload and customize your content with a powerful Fluid Engine editor. You can even charge one-time fees, sell subscriptions, and if you need a starting point, they've got a ton of stunning professional templates with drag and drop editing that makes site design incredibly simple, no coding required. Right, and all of this, as Squarespace has been a trusted partner of the PDS for years now, and if you still haven't given them a try, ask yourself, what's holding you back? We even leverage Squarespace for our very own Daily Dip newsletter, where tens of thousands of you beautiful bastards keep up with with our coverage in your inboxes, take part in daily polls, giveaways, and even access our PDS show notes with sources and links. So take the dive. Kickstart your digital space today with a free trial at squarespace.com/Phil or scan the QR code on screen. And when you're ready to launch, just use code Phil for 10% off. That's squarespace.com/Phil. But then, shifting gears from that, let's talk about why you may have seen more and more people these days saying for Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump is the gift that just keeps on giving. Because while Putin has not budged on any of his sweeping demands and prerequisites to end the war in Ukraine, you have people saying the American president has just been handing him win